Good evening. This is Maestro Cortello with a Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we have a 1v1 on Quest Heresy. Our first player is Troillet, also known as Toilailee, playing as the Space Marine Apothecary. This is a healing commander, mostly just a decent but not great fighter, relies more on his ability to heal and support Space Marine units. His opponent is Noisy, playing as the Imperial Guard Inquisitor, a disabling and debuffing commander who can also become a tanky melee hero with certain war gears. Alright then. Now, the game we're looking at right here is actually the finals of the Monthly Rumble Tournament number 13, which took place on February 28th. And this is a 5-game set. And one thing I wanted to say about this is, normally when Indrid and I cast games, we really cherry-pick games. We really want to find games that are really good as basically show matches. We pick games that are long, games that are very close, games that are very action-packed, and believe it or not, that doesn't actually represent the average game of Dawn of War 2. It mostly just represents the exceptional game of Dawn of War 2. And that's really not what all games look like. In this game, in this 5-game set between these two players, none of the games is longer than 25 minutes, and some of them are actually longer than 20 minutes, believe it or not. But nevertheless, I consider this premium content. It's premium content because, first of all, of the caliber of the players we're dealing with. These are really two of the top players in the game today, and to be honest, possibly ever. And aside from it being two top players, this isn't an exhibition game. This is a tournament game, and that really makes a huge difference. In my opinion, tournaments are, when it comes to deciding who's best or who's better, tournament games are really the only games that matter. Everything else is just practice. And I say this even though I haven't entered that many Dawn of War 2 tournaments, and it's been a while since the last time I entered a Dawn of War 2 tournament. I have entered many, many tournaments over the past 8 years for some different games. In fact, I've entered many, many tournaments for one game in particular since 2007, and so I'm very much of the belief that pretty much only tournament games matter and that everything else is pretty much just practice. And one of the things that goes along with that, especially when, as a viewer, watching other players, for the most part, you can't really judge a player just by one game. And, I mean, there are times when you could look at someone and they actually could be making bad decisions, they actually could be not playing well, and then you could play against that very same player and they can absolutely destroy you. They could force you into being the ones making bad decisions, and they might end up making all the right decisions. You can't judge players just by one game, and you never know how good someone actually is until you actually play them and also see who else they can beat. Just by picking apart someone's faults in a replay, you can't really just know from that how good someone is, and you can't really judge just from a single replay. Ooh, Sentinel goes down for Noisy. And I know I'm taking a lot of time to preach instead of talking about this game, but there are a few things that I feel really need to be said. And going along with not being able to just judge players very easily from replays, the last thing I really have to say before I really start talking about the game proper is that you also really can't judge the balance of this game or really any other just from a single replay, and especially if you do more watching than playing. You really need to play rather than watch in order to really understand the balance of the game and be able to make a reasonably sound judgment of it. Alright, so that's a bit of enough preaching, but some of these are in response to, or kind of precipitated by, or I don't know if that's the word, sparked by a lot of the balance comments that I've seen in comments that I, to be honest, have disapproved of, mainly because they've come from positions of lack of experience and knowledge. Alright, so I'll start talking about the game proper. This is, so far we see Noisy going for some of his typical long Tier 1 builds, and he's getting map control, and possibly in part because of it. He is famous for going for like 5 SWAT or 5 unit Tier 1 builds. This, getting his artillery spotters, that's actually now his 6th unit, because if we remember, he had a Sentinel that he actually lost in a rather surprising way. Well, maybe not that surprising of a way. It may have just been good positioning by Riku, but nevertheless, to actually see a high-level player like Noisy actually lose his Sentinel in Tier 1. It's very tough to kill a Sentinel in Tier 1, and I think Riku mostly got some good positioning on his tax. I did see that it was his tax that took it out. Now, did I say Riku? I did say Riku. I'm sorry, I meant Troillet, or Toilailee. Now, part of what Troillet's doing, he does have a double tack build. That is a build that I think is often favored against Imperial Guard because double scouts are a little bit less valuable against Imperial Guard than they are against many other races. Even though you could still potentially get map control out of a double scout build, what's tough for the double scout build in, I'd say, the Imperial Guard matchup is that the scouts are usually, they have trouble contributing as much to firefights as they would in other matchups. There aren't as many units for them to just kite that they can fight without having to engage directly in range fire. They will, certainly in their bolter form, they should be losing to guardsmen. They will certainly lose for cost. They will bleed way more heavily than guardsmen while not dying, while not living that much longer. The attacks are quite a bit more valuable in that sense, since they can tank damage, inflict losses, while hopefully not suffering any losses of their own. Now, if the attacks actually do lose a model, they will bleed very, very disproportionately, but a good Space Marine player, and especially an Apothecary player, should be able to deny those model losses. By just good positioning, not committing to fights that he shouldn't commit to, and good heals from the Apothecary. And I also, to the extent that we're seeing the scouts used, I like the way we're seeing them. Unfortunately, there he did lose a model, but I like the Scout Sergeant purchase, as well as the Shotgun purchase, because the Scout Sergeant does make the Scouts quite a bit more durable, that Scout Sergeant actually having 250 hit points compared to only 140 of each individual Scout, so he's quite a bit tougher. And then with the Shotguns, if the Scouts can get into close range, they can actually do a huge amount of damage to the Guardsmen, whereas I think the Guardsmen would otherwise pretty much win against Bolter Scouts. Certainly, if not win, then win for cost. Anyway, Devastator is getting disrupted. We do see both a heavy weapon team as well as a artillery spotter squad for Noisy. The heavy weapon team being pretty nice considering Troillet does not have any Assault Marines, and Assault Marines usually not, although they can definitely work against Imperial Guard, they usually aren't the most desirable choice. I also like this Holy Brazier choice from Noisy. This is something that Troillet really has to respect, because it's something that can inflict model losses against tax, even against an Apothecary player, since this is a 50 DPS power melee weapon, so he really has to respect that. Now, Noisy had the early map control, but Troillet does appear to be taking it back. He's certainly taken the victory points back a little bit. He had a triple cap for a little bit, which has put him back in the game as far as VPs. This is very brazen for the Scouts. I was wondering if maybe they were going for a grenade, and I also wonder if we have a model loss on this tax. Not yet, but now Troillet is pushing it kind of close, and he manages to not lose a single model on these tax squads. A little bit lucky, and he puts a heal on of them, so he's keeping a lot of field presence, and he should actually keep these tax on the field, and with good cover, they can still contribute to combat. If they get in cover right here, and in fact, if they just force melee the Guardsmen, they should be able to still win against the Guardsmen without even losing a model. And should, oh, but I'm wrong. Unfortunately, they were just still at too low health, and they did lose a model on approach before they could get into melee range. So Noisy does put his Guardsmen in cover, and Noisy actually goes for a Chimera, which, I mean, it should work out well with the fact that he's got a triple Guardsman build. Grenade goes in against the Guardsman. He actually just went for a hard grenade throw really directly on the Guardsman, which is, I mean, a little unexpected, but he wanted to force the movement, and with the movement forced, those Guardsmen were not going to be winning against these Scouts. I mean, he could have always done a shotgun blast, knocked them on their ass, and done a lot of damage while they were just on the ground. Either one could have worked, and either way, he used an ability to win that engagement, and these Scouts are actually at full health. Troillet has not chosen to get any kind of AV weapon yet. Oh, I'm just kidding. He has now upgraded to a las cannon. He did not have that ready when the Chimera approached. And he also chose to get a Plasma Cannon Devastator as his first Tier 2 unit. It looks like Troillet wasn't really doing that strong as far as his resource income. He hasn't really spent that much in Tier 2 yet. He's getting a Sergeant. He already has one. He may have just been in a situation where... Ooh, but wow, a direct Plasma Cannon shot actually did a huge amount of damage to the Chimera. Now, the Plasma Cannon Devastator is... I mean, it of course does plenty of damage to vehicles, but it isn't typically thought of as AV, certainly not as your first response. Although, I mean, the combination of a Plasma Cannon Devastator as well as a Las Cannon Devastator should actually be enough to take out a Chimera pretty easily. I think if the Las Cannon can snare the Chimera, I'm pretty sure the Plasma Cannon can finish it off. Ooh, but we saw a missile attack instead, and we have a Chimera at just one hit point. Bolter fire would finish off this attack, so Troillet at this point has actually gone pretty hard for AV, getting a missile attack as well as a Las Cannon and a Plasma Cannon. One of the great things also about the Plasma Cannon is that it can definitely nullify Chimera play if the Chimera, well, not nullify Chimera play, but can definitely threaten the Chimera as well as the guardsmen around it. Because if the guardsmen around it are repairing, they can get hit really, really hard by a Plasma Cannon Devastator. They will, of course, get reinforced pretty quickly, but that will be actually a lot of bleed, even for guardsmen. And that will also should force the guardsmen back inside, which means the Chimera would then not have that repair support. But part of what Noisy wants to do right now is that he's going to want to choose matchups like this. Have the Chimera drive around and face things like the Scouts or the Apothecary, units that are not capable of really inflicting any serious damage to the Chimera. Ooh, but we have a Manticore. I didn't even notice because Noisy has a full unit bar, but this is a Chimera. A pretty nice choice, I think, considering he does have to deal with two setup teams, and both of which are going to threaten his Chimera. And this is a part of the game where I think Noisy is going to really have to rely on that Manticore timing being just right, being able to take out the Manticore or take out the Devastators at the right time so that they won't be able to threaten the Chimera. And Troillet has also invested so much in AV now that this Chimera is very, very seriously threatened. So he has to be very careful with this Chimera, and this investment forces Noisy to be more careful. Which really, I would say it limits his use of the Chimera a bit more, because there are more units that he wants to stay away from with the Chimera. The Chimera might be doing just more staying back, using it for reinforcing and supporting on the field, as well as maybe just mobile capping, since it really can't afford to fight. Currently, it can't really afford to be in range of 4 of Troillet's units. It can't really afford to be in range of either Tac Squad, as well as the Las Cannon Devastators and the Plasma Cannon Devastators. And I mean, in any likely case, it will probably close. If it engages even one of them, it will probably be close to more than just one of them. Wow, these Stormtroopers in a terrible position. Some very nice infiltration to get behind those Stormtroopers. And I mean, even without that, the Stormtroopers were not in a winning position against a double missile attacks. Now, these double missile attacks, they of course do sacrifice one bolter to get their missile launcher, but when they also have the Sergeant, the anti-infantry damage of this squad of attacks is actually still quite solid. It's actually slightly better than their starting damage as a 3-man Tac Squad in Tier 1. Because the Sergeant does slightly more damage than a standard TAC model. Standard TAC models, oh man, I can't believe I'm blanking out on their exact damage values, but their rough damage values are about 14 DPS. The exact damage value has a decimal. The Tactical Sergeant, meanwhile, actually has a rough damage value of about 15 DPS. And probably some some decimal with the for the exact damage value. Anyway, Manticore strikes going in. A nice, well, we had some Angels of Death to reduce the damage that these tacs would take. I actually think that's a pretty nice choice. Keeps the tacs on the field. These tacs should actually, they would prefer to be in melee against the guardsmen. And wow, he's going to take out, wow! So Troillet, doing very, very well at this point, has made some good plays with his dual missile tacs. And he's also doing things like repurchasing sergeants, lost sergeants, to keep up the field presence of these tacs. These tacs have been out on the field for quite a while. And I mean, normally, like, certainly I think most players probably would have retreated these tacs because there is the risk of bleeding models and consequently losing requisition from keeping these tacs out on the field as long as Troillet is. But he's taking advantage of things like Angels of Death, the heal from the Apothecary, as well as buying back Tactical Marine Sergeants in the field to keep them on the field, keep up their field presence. We have a Manticore Strike going in on both Devastators, knocks over one, the other one it does a lot of damage to, but doesn't take a single model. And the Manticore is very, very scary for pretty much all setup teams. It is capable of wiping out a Devastator or a Havoc in a single volley. These Tactical Marines now getting dangerously close to the Manticore. And we've seen these Tactical Marines right now actually do a fantastic job against Imperial Guard vehicles. Usually, missile tacs considered more of a soft counter, especially, well, at least in their single form when you just have one of them, since their DPS is considerably lower than that of a las cannon Devastator. But we're seeing what the advantage is of the missile tacs, which is their durability as well as their mobility, which keeps them on the field quite a bit more, keeps their field presence going on a lot more. In fact, we haven't seen the las cannon Devastator actually do that much. It's gotten a few shots off, but it hasn't killed anything. All of the vehicle kills have been from the missile tacs, and that's because the las cannon Devastators, they've been getting forced off too much by things like the Manticore. Anyway, we now have a multi-melta Dreadnought as well. So wow, Troillet is just going full AV, but one of the great things about Space Marine AV is that you can often do it without compromising anti-infantry too much. I mean, the only thing where he really gave up anti-infantry firepower was putting a las cannon on the Devastator. And now he's moving a Dreadnought into base. This Dreadnought is it's definitely going to take out the Manticore, and this could even be the game-winning play. Except, wow, very, very smart play by Noisy right here. He's actually force meleeing with units like his Guardsmen so that the Dreadnought cannot target the Manticore, and he's actually going to keep the Manticore alive. And this is, again, some seriously high-level stuff that you would definitely not see from typical players. Now, in spite of all that, right now, this is not looking too good for Noisy. He does have a large VP. He does have a lot of VPs in the bank, with still having 271. Troillet has the triple cap and has taken most of the map off of that push with the Dreadnought, but that was a very, very expensive push, only to lose the Dreadnought without actually achieving anything. That was a push for the Manticore, and I thought it was going to work, but Noisy force meleeed with Guardsmen, of all things, on a Dreadnought to save his Manticore. I mean, again, that's the kind of thing that you're really only, I feel, you're really only going to see in a tournament match between top players. Wow, Manticore Strike combined with the Stormtroopers taking out the Plasma Cannon Devastator. I feel like I didn't actually see that much from the Plasma Cannon Devastator either, but I'm missing other unit losses as well. I can only imagine some combination of a grenade as well as shotguns on retreat. These are fully upgraded scouts, by the way. They have every single upgrade. They are leveled, and we're seeing better scout play than we would, again, see from our typical players in a 3v3 game who are not playing in a tournament. So I already feel like the plays that we're seeing right here are really exceptional plays that, again, we would see in tournament games from top players and not from our typical fare in long 3v3 games between our usual crowd. And I mean, not to say that the players who play in a lot of the public 3v3 games are bad, but they really aren't on the level of these two players right here. Anyway, las cannon Devastator is smartly on capping duty, and of course there it just got overwhelmed, but right now we see the las cannon Devastator on capping duty. The only unit it can really threaten at the moment is the Manticore. Other than that, the best purpose the las cannon Devastator can have in combat is actually to force melee. It would actually be very good to force melee against the heavy weapon team, and even against the Guardsmen as well. But this is still looking to go more in favor of Troillet, and Noisy's Melta Stormtroopers don't really seem to be doing that great at the moment. Their main purpose, well, so far the best thing they've done was that they did keep they did keep Noisy in the game when he was under siege by the Melted Dreadnought. And to be fair, if he did not have those Melted Stormtroopers when that Melted Dreadnought entered his base, that would have been GG in Troillet's favor, undoubtedly. But this is it's still looking like it's going to go in Troillet's favor. Troillet with he's got a triple cap, and VPs trickle down really, really fast when you have a triple cap. Grenade goes in, one guardsman squad, I think, goes down. Yes, it does, in fact, go down. But we are going to have some charging Ogrins. It does seem like he's maybe having trouble moving them around a little bit, and now we have some exposed guardsmen. At this point, Noisy looks like he might just be dropping his micro. We're going to see the Manticore Strike go in against all this stuff right here, and a very, very smart Angels of Death. Still taking a lot of damage, but it means he won't get knocked back, and I think that's really the important thing. And we have a late-game Assault Marine purchase. Noisy calls the GG. Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be able to hold the cap, and that is the end of the game. About a 20-minute game, and even though that was only a 20-minute game compared to like the 25, 30, to even 40-minute games that we usually see, I thought that was an incredible game. It was really, really awesome. Hope you enjoyed it. Game 2 will actually be coming up next, so see you soon. Have a good night.